Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 18th, 2025 Worcester Township Board of Supervisors business meeting. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? My name is Rick DeLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left is Lou Betts, who's our vice chair. To my right is Steve Quigley, who is our third member. Over on the side tables on the front, we have Wendy McKenna, who is here from our solicitor's office. We have John Everts, who's here from our engineering office. On the back table, we have Christian Jones, who is our assistant township manager. And next to Christian, we have Dustin Schreiber, who is one of our other staff members. Dan Domino is attending a managers conference for a couple of days and is out of town, will not be here this evening. That's a mouthful. First and foremost, does anybody have any informational items for the board tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This meeting is being video recorded for broadcast.
Thank you, Christian. First up, folks, we have public comment. We ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward. First item up on our on our agenda is the consent agenda. First and foremost, does anybody wish to remove any items from the consent agenda this evening?
Nope.
Okay, then Lou, if you'd like to make a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda, May 21 business meeting minutes, the treasurer's report and other monthly reports for May of 25, bill payment for May 12, 2025 in the amount of $314,883. Doesn't say any cents, so I assume it's even money.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye, motion passes. Moving down to motions. First item up is going to be a motion to authorize the advertisement for the accessory structures zoning ordinance amendment. So as you will both remember, over the last several months, we've been working on an accessory use structures ordinance. It has come through our planning commission. They have recommended it for consideration for adoption by our board. And the mechanics of that is in this meeting, we have to agree to advertise it. Did I say that correctly, Wendy?
Did.
So first, does anybody have any questions sort of on what that is or isn't? And at this point, it's the motion to advertise. We're not voting to adopt or not adopt.
No questions.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion if you'd like to make.
Make a motion that we approve to advertise the accessory structure zoning ordinance amendment.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, deja vu. We also need to have a motion to authorize the advertisement for the children's zoning ordinance amendment. What some folks might remember from a couple of months ago, there was a question raised about a text amendment to allow, I'll paraphrase, but to allow certain child care facilities in commercial districts in Worcester. They're presently allowed in the shopping district, zoning district, but not in commercial. So we asked that that go back to our planning commission and to our manager to be reworked. And it's now back before us for advertisement so we can consider it at a future meeting to vote on. So again, this is not to adopt the ordinance, but just to advertise so then we can have a hearing on it to determine if we want to adopt it.
So we're not going to do questions on the ordinance. We're just going to advertise it and then.
Well, then you'd have a full hearing where you'd have questions and those, or you choose if you have concerns and don't want to advertise it at this point.
I'm just going to make a statement that
Sure.
this property that came about that challenged this, and then Dan reworked it, and I think he made that property conform, because we didn't have any ordinance for childcare, we didn't have any definitions. And the way it's written, it's like any commercial property can be used for childcare. So I just want to be careful on this. We can advertise it because we're not passing it, and then we can refine it if need be. So if that's our option, then I'll make a motion to advertise the childcare zoning ordinance.
They've been working on the project with our legal team and township staff, correct? We've ironed out a lot of the details,
That's correct.
so I have no problem moving forward.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, we're going to have a motion to award the 2025 road improvement bid to Heidelberg Materials Northeast LLC in the amount of $1,029,395.60. John, can you give us a little more information on this? Folks who were not here last month, we advertised the bid process, and obviously we got some bids, and John can fill in some of the pieces on that for the 2025 road program.
Thank you. The bid solicitation was opened on June 11th, and we received a total of 5 bids. The low bid that was submitted was by Heidelberg Materials Northeast LLC of Flowertown, and their base bid was $929,378.60. Along with the base bid, there was one alternate add-on item, and that price came in at $100,017 for a total of $1,029,395.60. We checked the references for Heidelberg, and everything is in order, and the board sees fit. We recommend awarding to Heidelberg Materials for $1,029,395.60.
So John, have you ever worked with this particular organization for any road program or any projects that you can speak to?
As of this name, no, but they are a large paving contractor. They actually purchased 2 companies that have done paving work in the township previously.
And then we had a base bid, and then we had, was it one addendum?
One alternate.
One add-on. And could you just clarify for us? So the main road program is predominantly all the roads in Sunnybrook Estates, if I remember correctly from last month. What was the add-on piece that we would want to consider?
So the base bid was 10 township roads, and then the add alternate number 1 was concrete curbing and 3 additional roadways, which are
The roads in the back end of North Wales, right?
yes.
I forget their names.
Give me 1 second.
Sure.
So Creekside Drive, Pondview Drive, and Spring Creek Road.
Gotcha.
John, I have a question. A number of years ago, we went out on bids for the road program, and the oil prices shot up, and we got stuck with a much bigger bill than we anticipated. With all the uncertainty going on in the world right now with the fighting in the Middle East, are there any guarantees? What's the parameters this quote can move?
So there's no escalation clause. So when the companies do their bids, they kind of incorporate that in. So the numbers are going to be what the numbers are.
The number's a number then, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any concerns with doing both pieces now versus one piece? Obviously, it's a little bit more money to spend, but it ultimately sort of takes care of the whole road on that corner, or do you?
So John, have this Heidelberg Materials, have you done the background checks and seen any complaints from other townships, and they're credible?
Correct. We do background checks on all contractors that submit bids.
And there was enough bid awards that they were actually the low bidder, I guess?
Yes.
And you find them competent that you'll be satisfied with the work, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's all.
Lou, I had the same questions. I never heard of the company before, and I talked to Dan about it, and he said it, as John said, it's a rather large company, and they've been absorbing a lot of the smaller companies like everything else in the world.
Yeah.
The small guys are being bought out by the bigger guys, but I usually don't like switching companies unless I know something about it, but they have a fairly extensive track record. So I see no problem moving forward.
So the only thing I will say is I live in Sunnybrook Estates, so I would like to see my roads paved, and I don't want to, so certainly I support generally speaking, I support the project, and I support both the base and the secondary, which we've done the last few years, where if we can get the extra pieces done without spending a ton more money, I always think that's a good idea sooner rather than later.
I got a question, John. Was other contractors like Allen A. Myers involved in the bidding process?
Yes.
And my question would be, how far apart was this low bid from, say, the next one up?
So Allen Myers was number 2, and they're approximately $21,000 higher for base bid and ad alternate. So they came in at 1,051, 274.
Yeah, they're all pretty close. I'm looking at them now. Yeah,
It's
yeah, they're all pretty close. So we're not hundreds of thousands of dollars in difference. So I mean, we're tight.
I think our estimate was 1,060,000.
I mean, you're 20,000 difference between that and the next bidder. So, and I guess CKS will provide a on-site inspector, so we're not cheating on material. We're not, you know.
So the actually Public Works performs road inspections.
Okay. And you get tonnage slips from the quarries, so I'm sure you're verifying all this, I hope.
Correct. And we institute the contract documents, so we go through all certified payrolls.
So the same amount of material was bid by all the same companies, so the same amount of tonnage is being used. That's fine. I'm good.
So just to clarify for the audience, so they're the low responsive bidder, and the process is, it was a sealed bid. We got 5 bids that, met all the criteria, and then we have to accept the lowest responsible bidder. And that's, I said, it's only about 20,000, but we can't choose to pick, Allen Myers because they're local, or, if they're not the low responsible bidder ultimately. So if somebody would like to make a motion, I'll entertain it.
Make a motion that we award the 2025 road improvement bid to Heidelberg Materials Northeast LLC in the amount of $1,029,395.60.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Bob?
Bob Andor, real simple. What do we have budgeted for this?
Christian,
What do you say?
how much we budgeted for it? I think we budgeted $1 million or something in the million frame, but I don't have the number directly in front of me. If he has it, I'm going to ask him to give it to you.
Yeah, I mean, in general, if you've budgeted more than what this is, then I'm in favor of it. If you haven't budgeted, then I think you should reconsider. Last year, you did the same thing, where you exceeded the budget and proceeded with the alternate, even though you exceeded the budget. So I'm trying to understand that. But moving forward, I would, it's be one of those things you should think to yourself, let's inform the public. We budgeted this. Here's the bid. We have a savings or we have an excess, and how we're going to accomplish, I know what you're going to do with the savings, but what are you going to do with the excess, or how are you going to treat that? So that's my question.
Okay.
I can pull up the budget right now, but as John said earlier, the estimate was 1,060,000.
Yeah.
But I can pull it up right now, or I can get back to Bob.
$1,060,000, Bob, so right in the neighborhood of where we are. But we'll look to validate that for you, either way. Is there any additional public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? I'm just going to wait a second to see if he can grab that number for us.
I'll second it.
We're past that.
Make a motion to next.
It's all right. We're good. He's looking up a number. Christian's looking up a number.
We're still answering questions. I thought we were done that.
We're just trying to clarify a piece of information. And in the interim, I was checking to see if there was any other public comment on the motion on the floor.
Okay, so there's two methods or two funds that fund this program. I've identified the first portion, which is coming from the State Fund of Liquid Fuels, and just this portion, and I'll find the second portion, but part of it is 355,778.42 cents, but there's a second larger chunk that I'm gonna find in it because it's funded from two different funds. Yeah. Okay. So it looks like it was 1.377 million that was budgeted, so it's well under budget.
Okay. Thank you, Christian. Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Public comment. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, next up, we have, it's going to be a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-13, which is going to be approving the Westrum preliminary land development. So who do we have here and who's going to drive the bus to get started? That would be swell.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Rob Dunlock, attorney for the applicant. Here with me is Brian McKenzie on behalf of the applicant, as well as Jim O'Donnell with the Phillies cap. Jim is the owner of the property. Joe Tarantino is his broker who's here. JP from T&M, civil engineer, and David Horner, the traffic engineer for the applicant. This property is located on Trooper and Germantown, far corner of the township. Mr. O'Donnell has owned this property for quite some time. It's been in his family. The township took on an endeavor, as I understand it, 5 or so years ago to determine if the township needed additional multifamily housing zoning in the township. After that extensive review, there was a recommendation from the land planner of the township that the township did need to identify parcels within the township, and this was one of what I understand were 2 parcels that were identified for the township's multi-residential overlay zoning district. That district allows multifamily housing from townhomes up to apartments. Mr. O'Donnell is retaining his residence. He did not want to see apartments on this location. Mr. O'Donnell worked with the applicant to come up with what they think is a thoughtful multifamily plan. The applicant has worked for over a year now with township staff and then the planning commission on sketch plans, and then the plans were fully engineered, more meetings with township staff and the planning commission, which ultimately led to a recommendation by the planning commission for preliminary approval. There's still some work to be done. Certainly all the outside agency approvals need to be obtained, which is PennDOT, because Trooper is a PennDOT road, which is Germantown is a county road, so Montgomery County Traffic Division's involved. An NPDES permit is required through DEP. The Planning Commission asked the applicant to look into some additional items before they come back for final plan approval, and the applicant will work on that. So the applicant's here tonight. The plan is up on the board there. It shows the 45 proposed attached homes referred to as townhomes on the plan. These are two-story homes. Some of them have walkout basements because the topography slopes down. And the design there contemplates sidewalks throughout the community around the perimeter of the property. Um, Whether or not there's going to be on-site amenities or whether there's going to be a fee in lieu is one of the items we're going to talk further about with the Planning Commission. The detailed architectural for these will be, again, worked on after preliminary approval and reviewed with township staff and the Planning Commission before we're back in front of you concerning final approval. So the house there on the right, Mr. O'Donnell owns, is being retained there, and the remainder of the property is open space, deed restricted, buffering. Much of the woodlands to the north is being retained there. Um, and the layout will be subject to a planned community association. Those documentations will be reviewed by your solicitor as part of the final plan approval. The association will own and maintain all of the common areas. The roads are proposed as private, so they'll be owned and maintained by the planned community association, as well as the open space and other on-site amenities will be owned and maintained by the association. That's a summary of the plan. There's review letters. All of the items in there are will comply. And the applicant is, again, here seeking preliminary approval so that they can then work with the outside agencies and township staff and the Planning Commission on a final plan before returning back with those details.
So I have a couple of general questions, and then we might have some more granular stuff. So whenever I hear private roads on a new development, I have a generalized concern that the HOA really doesn't understand what they're getting in for with private roads versus public roads. And we have another couple of communities in the township that are private roads, and we've had, it's a common future complaint that they want the township to maintain the roads. So maybe you could, that might be a question for the engineer versus you, but maybe you could give some context to why you're thinking private roads and sort of what the argument for that is versus public roads.
Sure. I think that we're finding more private roads in multifamily housing communities, certainly apartments that are owned by one individual and leased out, but also townhomes for projects like this that are self-contained. Um, those roads are commonly, I think, in these townhome communities now, owned and maintained by the planned community. These are higher-end townhomes. We anticipate these townhomes being similar to the ones recently constructed in Whitpain Township there across from, what's the restaurant there? Phil's Tavern there on Route 73, is that? 73 in Butler. If you're familiar with those townhomes that have recently been built there, those are similar private roads with private amenities. And we anticipate that this will be owned and managed by owned and maintained by a planned community association, Mr. Chairman, but managed by a professional management company. All of the costs associated with maintaining the private roads and the common areas will be set forth in a budget, which will be disclosed pursuant to the Planned Community Act to all of the residents. They have to sign the acknowledgement and disclosure forms acknowledging those fees. They normally pay 2 months up front as part of the purchase, and the association, through their professional management company, manages the roadways in the common areas. But this type of project that integrates the parking within the roadway as we've envisioned it, I would say to you, are commonly privately owned and maintained. Certainly, they could be publicly owned and maintained roads. There's not a through access road here. I think one of the Planning Commission comments was they wanted to see that second access on Germantown as emergency access only, and we have left it in that fashion. So again, we think it works for the private. If it's something that you wanted to entertain as public, there's no objection here.
I don't know either way. I mean, I'm always curious about that because it has come up. The other thing you sort of touched on it in your sort of summary was planned amenities versus fee in lieu. What's the thought process there? I mean, I think it was the county review letter that sort of specifically talked about a desire to put amenities sort of into the project. But certainly I'm sure the planning commission also might have raised that question.
It was raised at the planning commission. Bob particularly, who's here tonight, was a supporter of on-site amenities.
Sure.
Others didn't have as strong as opinion as Bob did. Certainly, the builder and developer of the project would prefer to make the fee in lieu because they don't see those amenities as something that is an attraction for this level of townhouse buyer, whether it's a tot lot, whether it's some kind of gazebo that's a gathering area and potentially can be used by others at night. It's a maintenance issue. They would rather make the fee in lieu payment to the township to be used for the township park system for a larger amenities that are maintained at the township level on a larger basis. But certainly, we did agree with the planning commission at Bob's request when we returned back to them, probably prior to formally requesting the recommendation. We said for final, we're going to show them some amenity options.
Right.
So right now in the draft resolution, you're not making that decision tonight. You're deferring that, and we've agreed to vent that out with township staff and the planning commission, and then either show the amenities or propose a fee in lieu or some combination of the two.
Okay. Questions, Steve? Questions, Lou?
Yeah, I have a question. You made a statement, and again, the multi-residential overlay district was on the other side of the road, pretty much from Trooper Road all the way up to the high school. And that's where we have the four townhouses, communities, and during the curative amendment, I guess, they included that property. One of the land member planners said that would be considered spot zoning, but the zoning was actually changed because originally that property had somewhat of commercial frontage and the rest of it residential, and a by right clause that somewhat of the commercial could have been whatever the square footage would be required, and then several single family houses. Am I correct? So that property was never in the multi-residential overlay prior.
Yeah, I don't know the history. I know it's in the overlay now, and when I spoke with Mr. O'Donnell, he actually told me a story that years ago, you're right, it was in the commercial, and he had it under agreement for a buyer to build a CVS there on the corner, and it went forward, and he thought it was getting approved, and it got denied, and then CVS didn't move forward, and they terminated the agreement, and then at some point in time, he was notified it was rezoned to multifamily. And then he began talking with the team at Western about what he would consider a thoughtful plan for the property, and just evolved Mr. Betts to where we are today.
So you agree that the property was never in a multi-residential overlay district?
Well, it's in there today. I don't know the history, to be honest with you. I just know that I did read a transcript from a public hearing here where a Mr. Babbitt, a land planner, made a recommendation for certain additional multifamily housing zoning, and this was one of the sites that came out of that recommendation. So my knowledge was limited to reading the transcript when I was getting up to speed on the application.
Understood.
Any other additional questions or comments you want to?
I'm going to let you guys follow up, and then we'll do what we got to do.
I guess my first comment is that these ideas or these plans, I didn't have anything to do with. I was forced on us by the federal government, the state government, the county government, came into Worcester and told Worcester what we had to do. And, for years that didn't happen, but things change. And we had to scramble with Mr. Babbitt and look at alternative situations. It seems in the past 5 years, 10 years, we have more and more problems with these high-density homes moving into the township. Either neighbor issues, parking issues, fire truck issues, people having parties, parking in front of their houses. We never had this problem before. We never had to deal with those issues, and it's becoming a bigger problem. We have people putting homes in the township for $2.5 million that don't have enough land to put a pool in or a gym set in the backyard. Then they come to the township and plead their case, and hey, you bought the property with these situations, lack of land there, and they're the things the township has to deal with. So we become a police force on neighbor issues, which I don't think any of us really enjoy doing that. And the people come here and complain that, why do you let this stuff happen? And I think that's what I'm having trouble with, or I'm faced with, the neighbor issues, because they're all residents, they're friends of neighbors. You go knock on people's doors and say, hey, vote for me. Um, this is what Worcester's about, but Worcester is changing for the good. I'm not sure, but we need affordable housing, and what's the definition of affordable housing? So I see the plan. I see the situation that someone has a party for the Eagles game and there's 6 cars there and you're only allowed maybe 2 cars per house. And the neighbors come to the township and want the township to figure the problem out. And what do we do? And you just said the homeowners association, will they have their own enforcement codes there? How do they handle the situations rather than coming to the township? So there's some of the basic questions I have with a project like this. It's nice to fit it all in one area, but with that come certain problems. And you talked about the gazebo. Gazebos are nice, but it depends on the age of the people. And then they go there and they have a little party in the gazebo at night, and the neighbor who's living by the gazebo, the luck of the draw, he gets stuck with all the noise at night, and then he comes to the township and complains. These are some of the calls the township gets regarding some of these homeowners associations that eventually filters down to the supervisors, the manager tried to handle it, assistant manager tried to handle it, and then the residents reach out to the supervisors, hey, listen, this is my problem. So we get involved in those things. So there are the things that I think it's a concern for the board as we move forward in these situations. It's tough. I understand the landowner. Uh, I understand all sides of the issue, but we sit here and try to, I guess, be the peacemaker and try to do the right thing on behalf of the township. And it's just a situation that, we have. This is, I guess, has flown under the radar screen so far. You certainly know what's happened with City View over there. Um, you know, a lot of people are opposed to it. And when this comes out, I certainly know your neighboring townships, they want nothing to do with the sewer and water. And, we try to work with those folks, how we can work some of these things out. I think the infrastructure there, the road's really tight, widening Trooper Road. It's on all sides, and Germantown Pike is a problem. So I guess working through the planning commission, try to come up to solve some of these problems to make it the best for everybody. It's just, I don't want to say it's a long way off, but I think there's a lot of work needs to be done. So I think working with the planning commission, they're the first round, but we really haven't discussed anything about it at all amongst the board, moving any of the plans, I guess. So that's it, Rick.
So let me back you up if I can. So Steve touched on it, and when I read through the documents, it talked about parking only on one side of the street and some of those things. So we certainly have had an issue. How do you account for dealing with how life happens ultimately in a community like that? How, again, now you have, they're not our roads, but now we have 3 cars in a driveway that don't fit in a driveway, so you wind up on the street, and it's just the practicality of it. And I don't know, that we can govern that, ultimately, if it's working within the confines of the ordinance. But it is a concern. Like, it doesn't seem important until all of a sudden everybody's living there and there aren't enough places to park the cars.
Yeah. I certainly hear Mr. Quigley's comments, and the planning commission shared those, and we agreed as part of the final plan, we're going to work with them. Even though this plan exceeds what's required for overflow parking, and this plan has a minimum of, or does have 2-car garage and 2 spaces in every driveway. But, I'd submit to you that sometimes these types of issues work out. That is, these types of communities are here for a reason. They're here for a demand from buyers who want to move out of their larger homes, who may have a house in Florida, they may have a house down the shore, they want the maintenance-free living. So they sacrifice the close proximity of their neighbor in exchange for not having to do a thing with respect to maintenance. The HOA or the Planned Community Association does the lawns, the driveways, the shoveling, the exterior issues on the homes. They maintain the insurance policy on the building. So it's really a different lifestyle that you're trading for. And I think if you drive through that new community that we mentioned in Whitpain there at Butler and 73, you will not find, anytime you drive through there, because I live right around the corner, that not even close to half of that overflow parking spaces are ever used. People at that price point, they don't use their garages, for the most part, for storage. They pull their cars in their storage. They don't leave their cars in the street. They pull them in their garages and they pull them in the driveways. They're not throwing giant parties. If you live in a house on 10 acres, maybe you're having a party. If you're living in a one-bedroom apartment, you're not throwing a party for 100 people. So I think those things tend to work themselves out when you make the decision to move into this kind of community. But again, they're on our list. Bob, who's here, is not going to let us off the hook when we come back for final plan approval. We agreed to talk about the amenities and the parking and the architecture, and we are, as we've mentioned previously, investigating some other additional overflow options. I think we'll have that information, certainly for the Planning Commission and for you, that others there are offering some overflow parking in exchange for certain improvements we're going to do for them. But we're working on the details, so I'd rather not go into that. We promised the Planning Commission we'd have that for them, and we're committed to working it and getting this plan right.
Oh, I appreciate your comments, and once again, I know you're working with the planning commission, and it's their job. We don't really interfere with the planning commission. They have their own agenda and what they're moving forward with and certain things, but I guess, I guess my problem is the residents don't address the planning commission when the project's done. They come before the board, whoever's sitting here in the future, and, someone gets a truck. It's like, am I the policeman? It's just, you guys should think of that stuff before you move in the community. I know the community you're referring to versus this one, but everyone thinks their community's not gonna have any problems, but it just seems that there's always neighbors issues. You move out of a nice big house and now you actually have a neighbor after 35 years that you may not like, and they're parking their car on your grass or on the edge of the road or something, or someone has a moving truck. They, they've rented for 3 weeks and they park it and nobody get around it. And the state police get them. We're like a priest here sometimes hearing a confession, and I don't
Yeah.
think that's really our job. We like to make sure that things get ironed out through the planning commission. I've said before, when some of these projects get done, such as the $1 million house or $2 million house with no land for a pool or a backyard, that the developer we should make the developer write that in the bill of sale, in big black letters. Not enough room for a pool, not enough room for a gym set or a basketball court in your house. So when they sign the agreement of sale, here it is, but you can't do that.
We are limiting that here, and it will be in big black letters on those documents that your solicitor will review. That is, we maximize the deck or the patio off of this house. There are no additions whatsoever allowed. We put in the HOA documents that the garages cannot be converted to living space and must be maintained for parking. We will commit to a professional management company. It won't be managed by one of the homeowners here that will manage this. And yeah, if there's a problem with the neighbor, we hope they work it out together as neighbors. But if they don't, they call the professional management company,
They deal with it.
gets involved and works it out. But we can't stop them from calling the township because
Right, I understand that.
involved.
But I think, once again, this is not your first rodeo. You've been down the road already.
Yes.
You see the existing problems. We just want to try to outline some of these issues because this is really our first venture in these multi-unit properties, and it just seems they're all up here, and it's, people worried about sewer, they're worried about traffic, worried about parking, and, they're the issues the board has to face. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Rob. Probably questions for my engineer, but if you want to just hang tight for a second, John. I want to talk about the waivers. We've got 9 waivers, and there was some commentary with them, but I'd like to get your 2 cents on sort of why we're extending them. I know they provided some commentary in the, but I'd like to drill into that a little bit more if I could.
So the waivers that are requested are, are waivers that are granted by the township for other projects. As my job as a township engineer, I make sure that there's no ill repercussion from any waivers that are granted. Most of these are minor in nature, and they have been granted by the board in the past. The one thing I would like to say to your comment, Rick, previously about the private roads versus public roads. The ordinance allows private roads, and that is a reduction in the dimensional sizes of the roads. And I wouldn't recommend that the township take dedication of any of those roads based on the design criteria for private roads.
You say we would or would not? Yeah.
Would not.
Yeah, okay. I thought I saw that in one of your letters too, John. I mean, that we wouldn't want to take them, I mean, in terms of that. So Stony Creek Farms is a private community and they own the roads, and we've been asked multiple times through the years that they want the township to take the roads from different people, within the community. So it's more just thinking forward with regard to that. It did catch my eye, a couple of them had right of way.
So that's the same situation. You're allowed lesser right of way if they're private
Okay.
roads.
And then the stormwater management ones, it sounded like they were actually doing some stuff that was better for stormwater, but still needs a waiver. And there's maybe 2 questions there. One, did I read that correctly? And then bigger picture, should we be taking a look at the ordinance to account for some of that if they're using better materials to address stormwater?
So some of the stormwater management ordinances are outdated, and I think as part of the ordinance rewrite that township is talking about, that they'll get flushed out.
Okay. So Wendy, you might be able to answer this. I don't know for John, but just so I understand, I always ask the question, we're giving preliminary approval, which is sort of a mile marker. It's getting us to a certain threshold. There's still work to be done with the planning commission. There's still material steps that have to happen in terms of various, the permitting and things that the DEP stuff you've got to go through. What are we signing off on that we can't unwrap?
What you're signing off on is essentially 45 townhomes in the MR zoning district.
Which is allowed by right.
That is allowed by right, and that is pursuant to the ordinance that was adopted several years ago.
Right, the curative amendment did allow for this, and this is a by right plan. So it is not a case where we're making a zoning change for this property. We're simply allowing what is allowed here under that
Right.
ordinance.
And all of the comments that the township engineer and the township traffic engineer have set forth in their review letters, the applicant has indicated they will comply with. So, as Mr. Gunlock stated, there's a good bit of work that needs to be done, and the township engineer and traffic engineer need to be satisfied. All the outside agency approvals need to be obtained. So there is much to be done.
Fair enough. Do you have any questions, any additional questions? Lou, any additional questions?
I think Lou had some follow-up things he wanted to ask.
I'm ready to make a motion if you're ready. I've already made my statement, and so my statement is I'm going to abstain from the 2025-13 vote approving Western based on the fact that it was never in a multi-residential district. It was considered spot zoning by one member to land planning, and by doing so, following forward, if you do, that's fine, but we're setting a precedent that we could spot zone anything, anywhere, for any reason in Warsaw. So saying that statement, I'll abstain from the vote.
So there's, I'm not sure that's, well, I'm not sure that's correct. It's a zoning change that was made. Um,
I was not part of the Curative Amendment Agreement at the time, which
So I guess if I can try to jump in.
Yeah.
I can,
Sure.
the curative amendment was adopted several years ago. Um, This property was a property that was rezoned by that curative amendment. That curative amendment is in place. It has not been challenged. It's valid zoning of this property. So with all due respect to Mr. Betts, if there's some reason he wishes to not vote in favor of this plan, he's able to do that. Um, but that would be more appropriately, frankly, a no vote rather than an abstention. Um, the this was not the subject of spot zoning, um, and the zoning is in fact valid. This property is zoned the multi-residential overlay district, and that's what, if a developer comes in and chooses to develop under that overlay district, and they do so and satisfy the requirements of the ordinance, um, the Board of Supervisors is essentially um, required to accept that zoning.
Okay. So, fair enough, Wendy. Let me start with you. Do you have questions or comments that you wish to make? Lou's, at this point, Lou doesn't want to make a motion. We'll tackle that in a minute, but do you have some additional comments you'll wish to make at this point?
Well, I first said I was in favor of the project. It's not something that, when I sit there and look at the planning of Worcester, it's something that I envisioned. And for the 20 years I served here, we didn't have these problems, and we were able to work things out and move the developer. And certainly, Mr. Joe there has worked with Worcester for numerous projects over the years, and it's a give and take situation. But this is something that was forced on us. We had no choice. I mean, the zoning was changed. As I said, the government came in and said, hey, you guys are deficient in multi-family affordable homes. I guess I question the price on the apartments or townhouses across the street. Is that affordable housing? Um, Depends what do you do for a living. If we're all lawyers, maybe it's affordable housing, but for a lot of other people, it's not affordable housing. We brought the county in and they did their due diligence. We looked at where the best place in Worcester where it would go. Do you want to put it in the heart of Worcester and the other roads? The county, the planners
Right.
give us the suggestions as to water safety, sewer issues be addressed, traffic. So I'm not a professional planner, I'm not a professional engineer, so I rely on the people we hire to service the township and these needs. And it's easy to sit there and say we shouldn't allow this in here. However, as I say again, this was not our idea. Go take it up with the people that run the federal government, the state government, the county government. We were forced to do this, and we were forced to pick a spot to put it in. So we can sit here, to me, we can sit here and fight it and argue with it, but once again, the lawyers are going to come in here, and I guess we'll turn to our solicitor there, and do we want to end up in a legal battle and where,
Right.
I think you also want to remember that it was not Mr. Gunlock's client. Mr. Gunlock did not represent the township in challenging the ordinance in any way. Again, the curative amendment was done a number of years ago due to threats of a validity challenge, but um, that, without being trite, is water under the bridge. We have an ordinance in place that's been adopted as a result of the curative amendment, and a developer or a property owner has the right to develop their property in accordance with the current zoning.
I get, I guess I've been here,
and presents.
I guess I've been here for 50 years. I go back and look at all the properties we farmed in Worcester, from one end of Worcester to the other. Most all those big properties are all developed now, and nobody wanted those homes there. Well, after being in the neighborhood for 50 years or 40 years or 30 years or 20 years, um, they've assimilated in the neighborhood. They become good neighbors and friends, and they've contributed to the neighborhood. And Worcester never wanted anything in. They didn't want Meadowood in there, and Meadowood's blended in fairly well. They didn't want Milestone in. They surely didn't want your development, Rick. And look how you've turned out. You've turned out all right. So I think it's just a matter of
Right.
the evolution of time, and I think that's what we're faced with. As I said, I'm definitely not in favor of the project. However, there's legal situations here that you have to use a little common sense sometimes and say, you have to suck it up and say, okay, that's where we're at. So I
Understood. So I agree with you. I'll make the motion. I'm happy to make the motion. It will need a second. My preference would be you vote no if you're as opposed to.
One more thing, I just want to clarify something based on comments that were just made. The threat of the apartments and the curative amendment was from the Palmer property on 73, and because they wanted to save that, and no apartments were ever to be there, that's very central of Worcester, that it got selected up here. There was challenged by the land planning of other properties, and again, I have nothing against your property and what you're doing, but it's the way the process was done. I know it was done, and I abstained from that vote, and that being said, that, again, yes, the other two members of the board did pass the curative amendment and rezone that property. So being that said, you guys do your thing, I'll say no.
Okay.
Rick, one last thing. I think it's like we're elected by people to try to use common sense. And I sat here and I was outvoted on the high school football lights. We were told by numerous people we're going to lose, but we, the board, sat here for, I think I sat here for 27 meetings fighting over the lights of the football field. It was inevitable. Our solicitor told us we were going to lose, but we had to fight that. It was the right thing to do. Well, looking back after being there 8, 10 years, I don't think there's any drug, prostitution, beer drinking, wine drinking parties going on at the football field. It really has brought the community together, from soccer games to football games to lacrosse games to track meets. It allows the people in the community to gather together. So it's becoming, Worcester never had a gathering place. At the lights of the football field, we're a small group of people are against it. And that's always a small group going to be against something. But, I see the progress, not the progress I envisioned, but for other people it is. You mentioned it's a certain clientele you're going to go after. And looking back, you've worked out all right, Rick. So
Appreciate that. I agree. It, I think you've said it well. So I'll leave it right there. I will make a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-13, which would be approving the Western preliminary land development conditional on all the terms and conditions that are outlined in the various review letters.
and I'll second that motion.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. And so motion passes 2-1.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time. We'll continue to
Rob.
work with staff and the planning commission and be back at some point with the updates. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thanks.
We'll take a minute if you guys want to, if anybody wants to clear out. It was here just for that item. You're welcome to stay. I know these meetings are entertaining, Rob, but
Tristan did some nice work getting this time out here.
okay. Next up, we're going to have a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-14, which is going to be approving the Windy Hill preliminary and final land development. So But if somebody gets me started here on what we have, so.
Take that challenge. Nick
Look, I don't want to jinx myself, but I sense your two-lot subdivision
Yes.
is more manageable than what we just had.
Hopefully. So Nick Viola with Van Cleef Engineering, representing Arden Reserve. Len Del Grippo and his son, Len, are here also. This project is a two-lot subdivision of what was created as what was Lot 9 of the residual lands of the Huganier subdivision off of Ardmore Road. These two lots take access off of the end of the cul-de-sac of Windy Hill Road. And as part of the, what I'll call Huganier subdivision, the cul-de-sac was extended. It was improved to meet your current ordinance requirements. Mr. Huganier was originally supposed to keep that land. He ultimately sold that to Arden Reserve, and Arden has this plan before you for two lots. The one lot is 1.7 acres, the other lot is 3.7 acres. It's going to be a similar style house homes that are being built in Arden Reserve. There's not public water and sewer in close proximity here, so we'll be proposing individual wells and on-lot septic. I believe the next resolution, if this would get approved, is the sewage facilities planning module, which is just about ready to go upon the board's authorization on that. So I'm here to answer any questions. I think the reviews, we had two reviews from both CKS and Bowman. I believe we narrowed it down to just a couple of notes and agreements and things like that that are left.
So John, hang tight, I'm going to be back to you in a second. If you could maybe fill in the pieces. This was the Huganier track that was before us, a couple of years ago. And if you could maybe fill in some of the pieces to what we have here.
So the Huganier tract is off of Ardmore Road. It's a cul-de-sac extension. There is 8 lots off the cul-de-sac, and there was lot number 9 was an undeveloped parcel that was supposed to be held by the original property owner, Mr. Huganier. He sold it to the current applicant. They are proposing 2 lots off of Windy Hill. They are asking for a handful of waivers. Stormwater management will be handled by the existing basin that was to control impervious coverage from the original Arden Reserve.
John, as Rick looks through his file, I'm trying to refresh my memory. I thought when we went through this development, part of the deal was they were to get those homes, first homes in there, they were going to keep that tract of land open. And it sort of sweetened the pot to the township to vote for that. You probably weren't around for that.
I'm unaware of that. It's not delineated as open space.
I'm assuming there's nothing in writing, but I thought that was part of the sales. Were you around that, Rick, or not?
So I'm trying to remember. It felt like there was a lot of things with Huganier that got reworked multiple times to get to what eventually became before us. Now, to your point, I don't remember a specific restriction put on, that remaining parcel, but there, suddenly there's sort of 2 more on the back end. Nothing against your client one way or the other, but all of a sudden we had it, and then now we don't.
Right, there was a lot of conversation back and forth about the properties, and I think they came in and said, oh, you know what, we're going to keep this here, we're going to keep that land open. But once again, if there's nothing in the file there, we're
Right. No, I mean, when I read through the documents, I didn't see anything. It's 2 lots. It's certainly they all meet, size restrictions and, so have they been perk tested at this point, or that's sort of the next thing we need to do?
It's all been perk tested successfully. The sewage planning, it's been signed off by the county health department. And really the last step is to submit the planning module to DEP for them to officially amend the township's 537 plan.
right, to account for that. And then, you know, as you said, the waivers, as I read through them, they all seem to be sort of in sync with what we did for the other tracks, and then a couple things to sort of align to that, I guess.
So a handful of them are actually to kind of clean up some of the things that were remaining from the Hugoneer track that um, maybe should have been requested at that time, just because of the cul-de-sac extension. And we found that this was an opportunity to do that now.
Is there anything unique about either of these two parcels? I don't recall reading anything in terms of, you know, say a shared driveway or something. I don't recall that being the case in any of
No,
these, but
no,
I want to make,
Each of the two lots will have their own driveways coming off of the cul-de-sac. Uh, So yeah, it's a, I mean, fairly straightforward subdivision.
So the lot at the top, the driveway will be also using the emergency access. There is notes on the plan that you can't park there. It's just access for that house. The other thing is there's restrictions that these lots can't be subdivided any further.
Correct. And there was also one additional agreement where the basin could be used for snow removal by the township.
uh, thank you. That was the other thing in terms of just being able to do some of those things that obviously when you came through planning for approval, I know that came up. So, okay. And I take it, I'm going to ask you for on the record, but obviously there's a bunch of conditions of approval you've read through and you're comfortable with all of the conditions of approval that are in there and all of the various notes that are required from your standpoint?
Yes.
Okay.
Are most of the homes there sold already? They,
They, how many homes? Five out of the 8 are sold.
Interesting. I think we just saw two of them on the last month's report. Vaguely. Arden, yeah. Trying to remember. Okay. Lou, do you have any questions, comments, concerns?
Just a couple, and they're nothing major. This was never part of the master plan. There was there 9 lots initially?
Correct. There was eight proposed lots to be built upon, and then there was the residual lands that were to be retained by the original owner.
So these 2 were just held back and you decided to move forward, or?
This parcel was retained by Mr. Hugoneer, and then Mr. Hugoneer wound up then selling it to our client. So our client,
And the size of the lots again?
1.7 acres and 3.7.
And in Worcester, we always had that 2-acre minimum kind of thing. John, everything, is there waivers for that 1.7 acre lot? That it complies with the stormwater, the on-site septic, well?
Yeah, I mean, everything complies with that except for what's in our letter. The 2-acre requirement that you're discussing, I'm not quite sure where that comes from. The zoning allows, you know, the size of the lots that are being proposed.
I believe it's 60,000 square feet minimum.
Yeah.
The R100.
So it didn't match up exactly to 2 acres, but it was more square footage. Yeah. No, I got you.
I'm just curious because it was never part of the master plan. It was like an add-on after the fact, but you told me Mr. Hugier decided to sell and move out of town, I guess. And 1.7 versus 3 point, instead of 2.1, 2.2, and kind of even it up. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, and really it had more to do with frontage and just the irregular shape of the parcel too, extending further back. So.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay. You got anything more to add or?
no, just to Rick's point, you know, if we could work something out, because once again, the township zoning says 2-acre lots for the online septic systems, and, you know, having a 3 point some extra acres there, something can't be worked out to make it a 2-acre lot, because once again, once you open the door, everybody comes in. So you let him have a 1.75 acre lot, and why can't I have a 1.75 acre lot for online septic, where we've always had, you know, with some exceptions, a 2-acre lot for, you know, the on-site systems. So, you know, we go 175, the next thing we go 165, then we go 145, then we go 125. So once you start, I guess,
And this is, as I understand it, this is a by right plan with respect to the lot size. So it is pursuant
Right.
to
I'm sure that the developer would have tried to get more 60,000 square foot lots in there if they could. So it's going to be an irregular shape for these two lots just because of the way it's situated on the cul-de-sac.
Understood.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Now you got the second one, and they kind of go hand in hand, but we're gonna do them separate, correct?
Got to treat them separately, correct?
So I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution 2025-14 approving Windy Hill preliminary final land development.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Fast forward, deja vu. We now have to have the motion to authorize, so 2025-15, authorizing application of Windy Hill Sewerage Facilities Planning Module Component. So what we just talked about, John, maybe just for the public record, if you just sort of explain what we're doing here.
And so since these two parcels are within the 537 planning for public sewer, component 2 needs to be submitted for DEP for approval. And as part of that approval, resolution needs to be passed by the township.
We're basically authorizing that they can submit to DEP, who can then approve. We're not approving anything. DEP needs to approve something.
DEP and the health department, yeah.
Okay. Unless you have specific questions on that, us authorizing. Go ahead.
This application for the Windy Hill sewage facility is for an on-site module, correct, John?
Correct, 2.
Two separate modules, correct?
Yep.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2025-15 authorizing application for Windy Hill sewage facilities planning modules, component 2. So I assume that means 2 modules?
So it's a different criteria. So component 2 is for on-lot systems. Component 3 would be for public sewer. It's just the delineation DEP uses.
So the 2 is not for 2 of them, but for the,
It's actually the name of the paperwork. It's a component 2.
okay. You want to second it? Yes? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Good luck. Okay. Next up, we got a public hearing. Wendy, you're going to take this one, but this is going to be the Comcast franchise agreement. As a reminder for folks who were not here last month, this came up. We talked about it. Lou, if you recall, you had some concerns about our ability to get Comcast on the phone. I'm going to paraphrase, but
Surprise, surprise, we made a phone call.
we made a couple apparently.
Matt Bradford's office made a phone call. And we actually got people out there to look at that pole. It's still not fixed, it's still out there. But again, there's people out there with trucks and there's attention. Dan has actually found 2 contacts high on the level with phone numbers. The human people that we can talk to, not machines. So I'm all in favor.
So let's let Wendy reopen the hearing so that we can, or continue, whatever we did last month.
Last month, we had a public hearing with regard to the cable franchise agreement, which is a requirement prior to adoption of the ordinance authorizing the execution of the agreement. We had several exhibits marked, which I'm not going to go through again, such as the advertising of the ordinance itself, and during that public hearing, the question arose as to being able to contact Comcast. Sorry, contact Comcast if it should become necessary. So because of that, the board determined to continue the hearing and not take action last month and instructed the manager to see if he could in fact contact Comcast and obtain some reliable contacts. The manager was able to do that. He has obtained 2 names and numbers for individuals who I understand are local. So if there are issues that should arise, it won't be calling a call center somewhere and being left on hold or waiting for a callback and that type of thing. So Dan is not here this evening, but he indicated that he is confident that those contacts will be responsive to the township. So with that, it would be appropriate if to close the public hearing, given there, unless there are any other comments, we can certainly take public comment with regard to the ordinance, and then close the public hearing, and the board could proceed with adoption of the ordinance to authorize.
I'm just going to ask real quickly to make sure. I do not have any additional questions. We discussed them all last month in terms of the actual agreement. I just want to make sure that there are no other questions from either side. Then, Wendy, I think we're fine to close the public hearing in that regard. So now we would need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve a Comcast franchise agreement.
I think, wait.
Sorry,
Might still,
I'm getting
since
ahead
it is
of
a
myself.
public hearing.
You're right.
I think it would be appropriate to ask for public comment, and if
Sure.
there is none, to close the public hearing.
That is fine. So apologies, we had the public hearing open last month. We just closed it. So now, does anybody wish to make any public comment or have any questions relative? Is it public comment or questions, or we close the hearing? I guess I want to
You're
just
actually going to keep the hearing open right
still
now.
open. All right, the hearing is still open. Does anybody wish to make any public comment regarding the franchise agreement while the hearing is still open? I hope that's right.
That's correct.
It's already been a long week, folks. Sorry.
And it looks like there is none, so now it would be appropriate to
Okay.
close the hearing.
Okay. Perfect. So now we're closed. Now we can take a motion now, right?
Correct, yes.
You're right.
It's not stated, it just says public hearing. So I'm going to make a
Oh.
motion that we approve the public hearing Comcast franchise agreement
As presented.
as presented.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have other business. Does anybody have any other business to bring before the board? I do actually have one item that I need to, I want to bring up. So 1616 Whitehall there's a zoning hearing taking place next month on 1616 Whitehall. I looked at the calendar. It happens before our next meeting. So I think it's appropriate that we should send, make sure that we send Wendy and Dan, because ultimately we made a zoning determination based on everything that transpired with that specific property. We just want to make sure that they're defending ultimately what we did. And I don't know that we need to be any more specific than that, just sort of authorizing them to go. I think we need to do that because we want the solicitor to go, or, I think we should have that, but I want to get your input on it.
I think it's a good idea, Rick. I think it's a good idea because Wendy knows the thinking. She's been at court. She's been dealing with ongoing problem, and she was involved in the conversation regarding with the property owner, how we're trying to work things out. I think the zoning hearing solicitor hasn't really had any conversation with us.
Right.
And that's the way it should be. So I think really Wendy's there on behalf of the board explaining our views and making sure that we're dotting the i's and crossing the t's on this ongoing problem. Because the last conversation, everything seemed to be good, everything's going to be done, but we just have to make sure things are followed through. So I would agree that we should send the solicitor to the meeting.
Gotcha. What are your thoughts?
He's going to the zoning hearing board. We have two attorneys on the board. Dan always goes anyway as the manager. And do we feel that there are more legal issues coming and that's why we're sending the attorney?
So I guess there's two things. So one is we're not necessarily thinking there's more legal happening, but we have an open case with the county that Wendy is part of that the other folks were not. Ultimately, she's able to represent our position on that. I mean, I guess our position on that case is, I guess, how I might describe it, but I don't know that that's
Well,
exactly correct.
and if I can just
Sure.
jump in, so the zoning officer, Mr. Domino, as your zoning officer, um, issued a zoning determination with regard to the property, and as part of that zoning determination, um, he that zoning determination provides certain conditions that must be satisfied, and the property owner has appealed some of those conditions to the zoning hearing board. Um, because of that, I think it's important, those conditions are something that um, the, are in the township's interest and were discussed before the court. So I think it's important that the board have me there, again, as you said, to basically defend the township's position with respect to the conditions in that zoning determination. And I would not um, elect to have another night out if I didn't have to, or if I didn't think it was important. But this is something I think that it is important for council for the township to attend.
Mr. Chairman, I think the way things used to work in the township, when the Board of Supervisors solicitor went into the zoning hearing board meeting, I think the rule, generally accepted rule of thumb was, it's going to be denied. That's, it was wrong. I didn't approve of that. I think I'm voting to send Wendy to the meeting. She was involved in the negotiations, which we had. I don't think it's, Dan is good, but he's a zoning officer, but I think what we need the legal advice there if something comes up to work it out on behalf of the resident or behalf of the board and the residents of the township and to do our due diligence. So I think it's important. It's not that we're sending her there to say, hey, none of this stuff can be done. I think we worked an agreement out where
Right.
we know by law what he's allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. And I think that's why Wendy's there to make sure from a township's perspective that we're just dotting the i's and crossing the t's based on the conversation that we had with the applicant.
Right.
You know, everything seemed to be agreeable. He's willing to work with the township once we got some of those things ironed out in the meeting. And I think we're just being prudent to make sure we're following through on it.
Okay. Sounded like you had another comment, Lou.
One comment, and I think we're good. Mr. DePaul's gonna bring his attorney, so I guess we have to do battle. This is like courtroom 2.0, because we all went to court for the first round. It's a shame we don't televise the zoning, 'cause I think this would be fun. Love to hear this story, but I guess, will somebody take the minutes? Is there minutes in this?
There's a transcript.
Be a transcript,
And read.
even better. So you get like the whole thing, the actual wording.
Sure, I'll approve it. Let's go to battle.
All right. So do you want to make the motion or you want me to make
I'll
it?
make a motion, we send Wendy to the zoning hearing for the 1616 Whitehall Road situation.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, guys. I know that was not on the agenda, and I sort of sprung it on everybody. Next up, we have public comment. Does anybody wish to make any additional public comment before the board this evening? Ed?
Hi, Ed Moore, Valley Green. I missed last month's meeting, but I did watch it online. I'm fairly certain that the items I'm going to bring up have not been brought up, were not brought up last month. They involve a couple follow-ups, both of which, frankly, Commissioner Betts, you brought up these items. What's the latest on the band shell?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
What is the latest on the band shell?
Dan Shell. I was gonna bring that up. I'm glad you reminded me. In the works, I think.
So it was an item that we wanted to have for the budget conversation. I don't have anything more than that, Ed. We had handed that to the manager to sort of take the ball with that, so I don't know. But we can find out.
Because here's my question, and I'll have a follow-up to that as well. I want to say in the December timeframe, you guys asked the Planning Commission to undertake discussion on various locations, appropriate locations I went back through all the minutes of the planning board, and the last update I see from the planning commission on it in their minutes is in February. No follow-up that I'm aware of there. I'm not sure what the process is to keep you guys. I don't know if they ever submitted any recommendations to you. So what's the process once you turn it over for further review by somebody like the planning commission? What's the process, or is there a process that they have to follow to submit the appropriate recommendations to you?
So the band shell is a little bit unique. Some items do have a process. So we, at the beginning of this meeting where we approved, say, the accessory use structure was a specific, zoning change we were making. It went before and had some structure to it. This one, what we would typically ask for, and it probably hasn't happened, is we would try to give them some decent direction. We don't always do a great job of that. And then ask for periodic updates from them, or if in some cases, hey, we don't have enough pushback to understand, we don't have enough direction. I can say that the ban shell has started and stopped a couple of times between a couple of different managers, a couple of budget cycles. So it has,
Okay, so
so I don't know that there's a great process on that particular item.
So it sort of accentuates the point, quite frankly. I get that when there's a zoning, when there's a legality, if you will, involved, that you have a specific process that has to be followed. When there are several discussion items that have come up that, to the best of my knowledge, have never been brought up again, which leads me to the second item on my list, again brought up by Commissioner Betts, was comprehensive review of the sewer plants, because it happened to be hot on the heels of spillage at the Valley Green sewer plant. Haven't heard anything since on that. And so, again, it leads me to, when something comes up that doesn't involve a zoning change, a variance, or some such thing like that, what's the process to ensure that it doesn't fall off the table?
So let me answer this two ways. So on many issues, the manager will be updating the board periodically. We get a weekly memo from the manager every week on ongoing items and open items, and a lot of that typically is covered through there. It doesn't always make it back to a public meeting. Sometimes it does, depending on what the issue might be. That's usually the communication cycle that we're getting sort of a regular written update on different items. There's also sometimes internal memos that might get produced on certain items. It will vary. To your point, sort of what I'll call that loose list of items that don't have defined. Part of what Dan has been working on holistically is process in general across the organization of the township, because to be candid, you see what happens is that we talk about it and then meeting to meeting, we don't always have the continuity, and we sort of need somebody to sort of keep the ship. Hey, you talked about this. We need to have a work session on that. I mean, it's an imperfect process that we need to keep working on, and that's one of the areas that we've asked Dan specifically to try to help us structure better, so that we can get better updates to the public on items that don't have an immediate, sort of cycle to them. To your point on the sewer stuff, I know there were some conversations very specifically about the spill and how quickly and what happened and a lot of that. And then it was sort of handed to the administrative side to say, okay, let's try to get some structure of looking into all of those things. But there hasn't been an update since then. So I think we need to be a little better with that for sure.
So this sort of leads me to sort of pretty much anticipated everything that just transpired. So short of me and every other resident in the township calling, I'm sorry, Dan's not here tonight, calling Dan to say, hey, what's the latest on this or that? I would just suggest a mechanism via the website, that if something is brought up for discussion, some type of ticket be put into some file on the website, and further action here, no action, this is off the table, whatever. Just a place so that I don't have to call Dan and every other resident doesn't have to call Dan to say, what's the latest on this?
Fair enough.
Okay?
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate your comments. Bob?
Bob Andrew, Worcester. Clearly not an expert on this, but I understand that you may have needed to effectuate some kind of change to have the solicitor attend this other meeting, but that was not on the agenda. And so I don't know that you guys can vote on something that's not on the agenda, hasn't been advertised.
I think it's a matter that's appropriate under other business. It's a legal matter, and
Okay.
I don't think it was necessary for it to be an agenda item.
I don't know the answer for you there, Bob. I don't, it's a fair question to ask. I honestly don't know. But I did want to have it publicly discussed that we wanted her to attend. So I don't know.
And I'm not.
We'll have to check.
I don't know if there's a way that, I don't know that you even needed to vote to, I mean, you guys can make decisions all the time. I don't know that you need to vote on every decision that you make. It's just a procedural thing.
Sure.
I'm not sure. So I'm raising the question as to the legality of if you had to vote on it and you had to advertise it, then you'd have to have a special meeting, and so be it. I'm not trying to complicate the matter. My impression was that for you to vote on something, it needed to be advertised in advance so that people would know if that was a critical issue
Sure.
for other people. They may or may not be here.
Right.
They're not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
A comment to your comment, and I'll go back in past history. The board used to go and vote on buying open space, not being on the agenda. And the comment came up from, remember it well, it was Mark Landis. And he had said about public comments, and I guess Jim Gary said, well, as long as people are free to make public comments about the situation at hand, it's acceptable. I guess for non-agenda items, if you allow public comment on something, I'm not sure the technicalities of it have to be opened up to public comment, or we just had public comment on it, then they're accessible. But they used to buy property, and it was not on the agenda, and we go and spend $1.5 million. It's not on the agenda. How can we go do that?
I'm raising what I thought was the requirement. I'll have to do my own research.
So we'll certainly take a look at it, but as the solicitor is authorized to handle basically all legal affairs of the township. So it might be technically correct that it wasn't necessary to do that officially on the agenda, because I'm authorized to prosecute
Right.
matters on behalf of the township. But
Maybe it didn't need a vote either way, but I certainly wanted to discuss it with both of them in public and make sure that we did that. So
Can we correct the problem by bringing the subject up again, allow public comment, because the way I understood was you have to allow public comment.
we did.
A non-agenda item.
We did. We allowed it.
Public comment.
I think what Mr. Andor's talking about is the fact that there's a requirement now that an agenda, a board agenda, be posted 24 hours before the meeting. That's what you're referring to, Bob, right?
I
don't know.
In the context that if I'm here, I hear what you're saying, but if other people knew that that was something that you were going to vote on, they may not have seen anything else in tonight that was of interest to them, but that may have been interest. So that's in that context. I mean, I'm not sure when that whole issue came up.
I don't know. I know we certainly could have taken it in an executive session outside of simply gone into executive session and done it as well. I don't, again, we're not trying
I don't know
to,
what happens in an executive session, so I have no idea the legality of what you guys handle back there. So from that perspective, if that's the more appropriate thing, I'm just saying this is what you did. I'm questioning whether it's appropriate or not. And
Okay.
ultimately,
sure.
whenever it came up, if you knew about it more than 24 hours ago, then you should have planned accordingly so that we all would have.
It came up in an open court case. I mean, that's essentially what Wendy was
Yeah.
representing the township in an open court case.
Right, but I can tell you, it came up for me about 2 hours ago because I looked at the date of the meeting and realized it. So no, so from my perspective, but either way, I got you. I appreciate the comments. Does anybody else wish to make public comment before the board? Okay, seeing none, motion to adjourn. Thank you all for coming.